So when we talk about Christian growth around the church, very often we talk about prayer and Bible study as like the two great disciplines that are kind of the engine that fuels spiritual growth, and I think that's true. But there are two things, and we hit on them from time to time in terms of the practices and the contexts in our lives for prayer and Bible study to kind of work its way into our DNA. There's another two great practices, and they've been practiced throughout Christian history, of community and solitude. Doing the Christian life with other people, and then also finding time to pull away and focus exclusively on our relationship with God and to connect with some of the thoughts and feelings and experiences that sometimes get stuffed away in the busyness of life. Last week, we talked about community and the importance of that. We kind of broke that down into 4 pieces. And today, let's talk about solitude and break that down and see kind of what it means to commit to this ancient practice that is probably the most neglected in our culture, at least in terms of understanding what do we mean when we say solitude.
Welcome to the For Lake Norman podcast. So glad you've joined us. My name's Tucker, and this is Anson, and we're both pastors at Lake Norman Baptist Church, and we exist as a church to bring healing, connection, and purpose to people all around our community here in Lake Norman through the love of Jesus. And these conversations that we have we view them as a part of that. And so we hope that by talking more about what we're diving into on Sunday mornings as a church, that it leads to a little bit of healing, a little bit more connection, and a little bit more purpose in your lives as you listen. So I've been out of the host seat for almost a month now because I was gone on vacation and then preached for 2 weeks. So I got to get my sea legs back under me.
Yeah. I think you're going to get it right back. It'll be all right.
Yeah.
I have confidence.
Probably like riding a bike.
Probably. It doesn't go away too fast.
Because we've done, I think, 40 episodes now. So
have we?
Uh-huh.
Well, congratulations to us.
Yep.
40 episodes.
I actually think it may even be more than that because I think I started counting them after we were well into doing them.
So 40 plus.
Maybe 50. Whew. That's a
Well,
big deal. We need to celebrate.
To do anything for 50 weeks in a row, something to be proud of, I think.
Yeah.
So thank you for, you're the one who's keeping the train on the tracks. So thank you for making it happen and keeping it on the calendar and wearing the headphones and doing all the stuff to make it happen.
Happy to.
And thank you to Nathan, our volunteer, who faithfully does the editing and posting and all the good things to make it happen. So
it probably would have died off had it not been for Nathan taking on
nice.
A lot of the back end stuff.
It's a good example of someone finding their place in the life of a church.
Absolutely.
So good dude at our church, and he's got some skill and ability in this area that he's volunteering, and it's making a big difference.
Yeah.
So
huge difference.
Thank you, Nathan.
Yeah, thank you. Well, you're preaching again this week,
and
you just had some time off. How was that for you?
Time off is always good. It's turned into kind of an annual tradition in the Hanburys that we gather for July 4th down at my parents' in Jacksonville. And it seems to be the one occasion that gets more of the siblings and cousins and extended family together, more so than Thanksgiving or Christmas or things like that. So I see more of the family in July than any other time. So that's good. Saw some family members I haven't seen in a couple of years, in fact. Wow. And we watched the fireworks on the beach, and that's kind of our tradition. So
nice.
That's been good. One of the traditions is, for people that are from the North Florida area, they might know the Itchituckney River. So it's this spring-fed river, so it's cold water out in the middle of Nowheresville in central North Florida. but people go to float on tubes down the river. And I remember doing this when I was a kid, and you would go to these like roadside tube vendors and get these big black tubes, and they'd be burning hot in the sun, and the water is like 50 degrees, so it's freezing, and in the sun it's like 150 degrees, so it's so it's fun, right? So you float
balances out.
You float down the river with all your all your best friends from all across North Florida, and you pack it in. It's not my favorite thing to do. A lot of my family members, they love the tradition of it or whatever. I'd just as soon, go to the dentist than go float on the Itchtuckney. And not because I don't like being out in the sun. Like I'm a pool guy, I'm a beach guy, but you drive a long way to get there. You kind of walk barefoot through a gravel parking lot. It's just a weird thing. Anyway, it's not my favorite.
Yeah.
And for the second year in a row, I've gotten out of it. So last year, my youngest son, unfortunate, he got sick. So I volunteered quickly to stay back with him. So, I slept in and sat around the house instead of the adventure. This year, I learned something new about, I guess, newer cars. So one of my family members, we were all kind of converging from different parts of the state, and they broke down on the way. And the way I got out of it was my dad and I wound up being the caretakers of the car. So we found a mechanic in this small little town near Itchituckney River, and everybody else went and floated down the river, and my dad and I sat at the mechanics while the car was getting fixed. What was wrong with the car is something I'd never heard of. So for some unexplained reason that they got to figure out, my sister's car had gotten like critically low on oil. They couldn't find a leak, so somehow it's like burning off oil. I don't know. Some of you are mechanics. You'll know exactly, but I don't know. It's a mystery to me. But it's a newer car, somehow critically low on oil, and it's got a safety feature that instead of burning up the engine, it'll just shut off. So I've never heard of that before. So she was sitting at a red light, driving down the road, and car just cut off. And then after a while, when the car cooled down, it would start again, and you could drive down the road. But once it would heat up, it would shut off again. So the short fix was, and it wasn't like they were overdue for an oil change. It was weird. So they gave her a fresh oil change with fresh oil, reset the thing. Then they got to figure out why the engine was burning up oil or if it was leaking and whatever. But they got to figure that bush out. But I've never heard of that before.
I haven't either.
I'd better to have that than your engine burn up.
Yeah.
But that was a new one for me. But I'd much rather sit in the mechanic's lobby with my dad.
Really?
Yeah, than go floating down the silly river and all the accoutrements that go along with it. And you're packed in with like the sea of humanity. Like, you spend the whole time trying to like keep the tubes together for your family, and then you got all these strangers like passing by and busting through, and it's just strange. Yeah, it's a strange thing.
I've never done the tubing down a river thing. They used to be one of the wrecks at the summer camp I worked at. Yeah. And I'm glad I felt like if I had to do that every day for a whole summer, then I would probably feel the way about it that you do. Yeah. But you would go whitewater rafting, and it was at the Nantahala River in like western North Carolina. Yeah. And the water was extremely frigid. And they always said if you say it's cold, they would throw you in it. But if you said it was refreshing, you were good. Okay. Refreshing. So it's refreshing, not cold.
That sounds better to me. I've never done whitewater rafting. I've always kind of wanted to.
It's very fun.
Yeah. Never done it.
I think if I would have done it somewhere else, I don't think I would think as fondly of it, because at the camp I worked at and went to as a student, when it would get to like certain points, so that their counselors were the ones who were the guides instead of the outfitter. Yeah. So when it would get to certain points where it was shallow and there wasn't like anything dangerous, they would let you paddle up to other boats, and you could jump on, they called it pirating. And you could jump on the other boat and start like throwing people off. And it was a blast. It was
that
awesome.
Does sound fun.
Yeah. It was a good time. And then they would stack up rafts on top of each other. Like you'd pull off to the side at one point, stack them up in like stairs, and then you would jump off of it into the river. And then there was a rock you could jump off. It was very fun.
All right.
Yeah.
So at any rate, a lot of people love the floating down the river. I don't so much, but I
Mhm.
didn't have to do it, so that's good.
Mhm.
And my sister's car didn't blow up,
That's
so
good.
we'll take it as a win. Had a good time
Mhm.
with the family, but then back in the saddle. And
Yep.
yeah, the sermon this past Sunday, by the time this drops, yeah, we'll be back in the saddle with the tech series
Yeah.
and even it up. I will have preached to, and you've preached to.
Yep.
So yeah, so in the sermon, we're talking about information technology. So the
Mhm.
internet and the devices that ride on the internet
Mhm.
is the topic for the sermon, and it's an interesting parallel. Like you can look at maps of Bible times and the Roman network of
Mhm.
roads. So, like, one of the great contributions the Romans made to
Mhm.
civilization was the paving of roads. And it made, travel so much more accessible to get to various different places,
Mhm.
much, much easier, much, much faster. And so the Apostle Paul, the first great missionary, and, his missionary teams of the early church, one of the ways that the gospel was spread so much more quickly than it could have otherwise spread is through the roads that the Romans built. And so you can look at maps of these missionary journeys and the sea routes and then also the land routes on the roads. But it was thanks to the technology of the day that the Romans were implementing, right? So it gave literal highways for the gospel to travel down.
Mhm.
And Paul and the early church made good use of that technology. And so you can look at those maps and you can side by side look at them, and we do this in the sermon. There are maps of the literal cables that run at the bottom of the ocean in all these different the
Mm.
system of hardware
Mhm.
that the internet runs on to bring information all over the world. It's something that was new to me. Like I'd never
Yeah.
seen I don't think about how data
Yeah.
gets from my phone or computer to the servers and all the things to wherever somebody has uploaded that information. But it's not, when people talk about the cloud, we think about this sort of like
It's just
this
out there,
disconnected
up in
out
the
there.
air. Yeah.
But the cloud is actually physical buildings with physical computers connected by physical wires
Mhm.
in this, broadband network of cabling that literally covers the globe. And
Mhm.
so there's these undersea highways of massive arteries
Wow.
of wiring
Mhm.
that interconnects the world through the internet. So it's like the hardware
Yeah.
that forms the internet that becomes the highway for all this information, these data packets to go up
Mhm.
and down at, you know, lightning fast speed. And it's an interesting parallel that, when you think about the technology in the early church, it was a network of highways
Mhm.
for information to carry, commerce, trade, travel. But when we think about like the New Testament letters and the spreading of the
Mhm.
gospel, the data packets that
Mhm.
form the good news of the gospel, these letters, that
Yeah.
we're going back and
Yeah.
forth, we're traveling on this information superhighway.
Mhm.
And that's, an early sort of primitive version of what we have today. And I think one of the questions for us is, how we're using that technology, both the internet, that
Mhm.
information superhighway, and all the various devices that are connected to the internet, from
Mhm.
home computers and work computers and servers to our phones to our
Mhm.
watches to all the various devices that ride on the internet that are endpoints for that information to travel. So that's kind of what we think about in the sermon. But as we've been talking about on the podcast, okay, what are some practices that we can build in that not only help us, if the sermons are some principles, some wisdom for how to think about
Mhm.
modern technology, some ancient wisdom for modern technology, then we've been talking on the podcast about some practices that we can build in that can cultivate some balance to that system,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Some
Some
balance.
healthy boundaries.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. So last week we talked about community. And this week, I want to talk about the other side of what I think is the same coin of community, and that is solitude.
Mhm.
And it's not intuitive that that would be two sides of the same coin, but we've been using practicing the way, John Mark Comer's stuff,
Mhm.
a lot during our conversations here lately. And one of the things that they bring out in their practicing the way framework is that community is making time to connect with others. Solitude is making time to connect with God. And so it's both are really relational categories. And we'll never really have the kind of space that we need to cultivate a relationship with God, or what you might call a relationship with ourselves, like really understanding our own thoughts and feelings and things that we stuff. When we talk about stuffing down emotions, we mean getting them out of sight so we can ignore them and move on. But that's not a healthy thing to do. So how do you actually process our own thoughts and feelings and emotions and experiences in life? Well, you do that when you make time through solitude. And so solitude it's not anti-relationship. It's actually a relational category itself in terms of the connection that we have with God and even our own healthy self-concept. So it's an important category, I think, to talk about.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. I think it is even more so needed in today's world because of all of the information technology we have. I mean, it's just constant noise, constant distraction. And I would say before my journey of following Jesus and even early to a good ways through my journey of following Jesus, I was someone who like hated silence or like just I didn't like being alone either because I was really extroverted. But I always had to have something going. Like even when I was studying in college, I would have the TV on and would be playing music, which to some of you that sounds like a chaotic mess, but it actually helped me like focus somehow.
And you're still that way. You've got your TV up on in your office. You got, Sports Center going throughout the day.
And but it was like
more so than that.
It was just I'd never gave myself an opportunity to be silent and to like be with my own thoughts. And so it's been a area of growth I've had to work on over the years. But I know a lot of people like that that just can't stand silence. And so they'll fill it with whatever they can, whether it's their phone or music or a book or whatever it may be. So I think this is definitely a practice that we need to collectively as a society, we need to work on.
Yeah. And not one that I don't think it doesn't get much airplay or, respect. I think in our modern culture, as I think about it related to tech, one of the ironies is people spending so much time on our phones. It is an isolating practice, right? So like, alone in your room. I know for like my kids and their generation, like teenagers, like literally laying in bed, scrolling on the phone for as long as humanly possible. That's an isolating event, but that's not what we mean when we say solitude. Like, yes, in a sense you're alone. But one of the points that Comer makes that I appreciate is that when we talk about solitude, it's both a place, being by ourselves, and a practice. It's something that we choose to do in a place where we're alone, and it's got some healthy rhythms to it. So there's 4 pieces to it. I'll name all 4, and then we'll kind of chat about it. The place part of it is when you read the New Testament, Jesus was constantly pulling away to what, translations of the Bible might call a quiet place or a place by himself. The Greek word is eremos. So it's this place of solitude, meaning getting away from the crowds. Jesus was the crowds were constantly pressing in on Jesus. And the more his ministry went on, the greater those crowds got. And so he had to be more and more intentional and put more and more effort into finding this quiet place where it's not noisy. Like literally physically noisy, in order to practice some elements of solitude. So the place would be like finding a quiet place. And we can talk about that, right? Where we're absent all the various noises. And then when we find that quiet place, somehow getting the noise in our head and in our heart to quiet down. So it's a quiet place would be the first thing. And then in that quiet place, there are 3 encounters that form the practice of solitude: an encounter with ourselves. And that's what we talked about, kind of our thoughts, feelings, emotions, experiences, things like that, just processing our life. an encounter with the enemy.
Mm.
So the Bible talks about Jesus going out, like the temptation in the wilderness.
Wilderness,
Jesus'
yeah.
famous temptation in the wilderness was an encounter with Satan himself
Mm-hmm.
in this quiet place where Jesus was away from distraction, and then an encounter with God. And
Mm-hmm.
this is that relational category of, in many senses, we don't have an opportunity to meet God until we're in that quiet place where we can have these encounters. And kind of working through this framework, in many ways, we're not going to experience what we can and should receive from God until we've had some encounters with ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and even kind of weathered some of those encounters with Satan, with the
Mm-hmm.
spiritual enemy that wants to keep us from an encounter with God.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on when we talk about solitude, and we kind of break them down, piece by piece.
Yeah.
So good.
I was just gonna ask, before we dive into all of it, I'm curious, what does this look like? What does that rhythm of solitude look like for you currently? Because here's why I'm asking. Let me preface.
Yeah.
I am married, but I do not have children yet.
Right.
So it's fairly easy for me to have a time in the morning to be quiet. And, this is something I've had to
Yeah.
develop over the years. I remember when I was just talking to Haley about this recently. When I was in high school, um, my dad, he'd get up in the morning, make a cup of coffee, cut the TV on. And I remember I would wake up early to drink coffee and watch Sports Center before going to school. But that was like how I started my day, was
Yeah.
with the TV.
Yeah.
And slowly over the years, I've had to, because I've been following Jesus, it's like, okay, I need better rhythms to start my day
Yeah.
off. And it's been solitude,
Yeah.
which includes Bible reading and
Yeah.
prayer and being silent and not having any distractions. So, but my point being, for me right now, it's easy because I don't
Yeah.
have a bunch of little kids
Yeah.
always needing something or in the
Yeah.
house. So for you, who has 5
Yeah.
children, I'm just curious.
Children in the home are enemies of solitude for sure.
Yeah.
I love my children.
Uh-huh.
I love children in general, but they're not making it easier to have solitude.
Yeah.
There's no question.
I would imagine.
But listening to you describe your own practice, it's an interesting thing. So getting up, watching Sports Center,
Mhm.
I think it seems like that's a place of solitude. You're by yourself.
Yeah.
There's not people around, but it's not a quiet place.
Correct.
Right? I mean, it's a
Yes.
place.
Yeah.
And you're by yourself. So I think one might assume, oh, I'm by myself. I'm doing, I'm
Mhm.
doing something that I like, that's life-giving.
Mhm.
That may count as like a Sabbathy type of thing, right? You're choosing to do something that you take delight in. But the practice of solitude is different than consuming something that's a noisy thing coming from the outside. My practice. So it's interesting. Over the years, I've had more flexibility in my work
Mhm.
to allow myself to build in practices of solitude, both work related solitude, which I think is a category, kind of a subcategory,
Mhm.
because much of what I do is content creation, is writing, which requires thinking and reflecting and prayer and study. But a lot of that's in a work category, but there's this weird overlap for pastors, right? We have this
Yeah.
this unique overlap of vocational work and also spiritual practice. So I mean, I embrace that. So and I appreciate that I have that in my role. Not everybody does.
Mhm.
It's something that you and I can be grateful for. So, but that's not, if all it is workspace, then I don't think that's sufficient.
Mhm.
So what I try to build in, and this is, it's not as consistent as I would like it to be, but building in at the end of my day, at the end of my work day,
Mhm.
I generally will have the ability to take at least a half hour, if not a couple hours of, depending on how early I can get
Mhm.
away, of just solitude time. And it might
Mhm.
be taking a walk, might be taking a run, but without inputs, without earphones, not without
Mhm.
listening to a podcast, without listening to
Mhm.
music, but just time where And I can do it better if I'm walking than running because there's just
Mhm.
less effort being exerted.
Yeah.
But there's a space, a place near my house that I like to go, a county
Mhm.
park where, you know, I can be pretty confident that there's nobody that's going to be tapping
Mhm.
my shoulder or needing my attention. I need to get out of my house. I need to get out of the office, get away from the church. So usually if I'm out and I think just the physical activity of walking
Mhm.
helps me.
Yeah.
So if I can do that, 2, 3 times a week
Mhm.
and get out, there's one place where I like to walk on some trails. Others, it's just like a paved path. But if I can get, 30 minutes to a couple hours of solitude out in
Mhm.
nature, walking,
Mhm.
that's going to be my most consistent practice and my most beneficial time.
Yeah. I've found it's funny you say that because I think walking helped me fall in love with solitude and see the benefit of it.
Yeah.
Um, because yeah, it was when I was in a season just wrestling with my sense of purpose and work and what I wanted to do, and I was at a job that I didn't love, and I just started going on daily, like 30-minute walks with no phone. Or, I mean, I had my phone on me, but it was not a distraction, no headphones, and I would just walk and pray. And what it did for my spiritual health, but also my mental health, and also, I mean, physical health too, was just incredible.
Yeah.
So I'd recommend that if you have the flexibility with your job or you have a second, like if you're a stay-at-home mom or something, and you can go for a walk, which that'd probably be a little different for a stay-at-home mom. But I think walking, there's a Japanese theologian who talks about living at the pace of God, which
Hmm.
he says is 3 miles an hour because Jesus walked most everywhere.
Yeah.
And so, you know, just that idea of being unhurried
Hmm.
and not distracted.
Yeah. I agree. And I think there's something physical about that as well. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're married, I'm married. Anybody that's had a meaningful enough relationship that you've had to have some hard conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's easier to have a hard conversation when you go take a walk.
Mm-hmm.
Your body's moving,
Mm-hmm. You're side
you're
by
you're side by
side
side.
instead
That's
of
right. You're
against
not like
each other.
staring eyeball to eyeball.
Yeah.
That nervous energy in your body, it's like you're doing something with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just like bottling it up to stay still. So I think the same principle that makes it a little bit easier to have a difficult but meaningful conversation in a physical relationship. I actually think there's something to that in this encounter with ourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because, if I've got a lot of unprocessed emotions, frustrated, I'm angry, I'm, confused, whatever the thing is, right? Feeling a lot of pressure. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's something that, I can, lots of seasons where I just felt like there's a lot of pressure on me to deliver, and right or wrong, it feels like it's all up to me. And so I will need that solitude time with God to say, to be reminded and to consciously and intentionally say, all right, God, like, so I'm a pastor of a church. One of the temptations in my role is to think that everything, like I'm the Messiah, like it all depends on me.
Mm-hmm.
And if I screw it up, it's all going to pot. That's not true, but
Mm-hmm.
that's what the enemy tells me. And that's what I naturally believe. So I need that
Yeah.
time in solitude to fight against that lie and go, all right, Jesus, the Bible talks about the church as the bride of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
The church is your bride. You're responsible for the church. I'm doing my best with integrity to lead in the responsibility that you've given me, but I can't carry the weight of, the
Mm-hmm.
ultimate sustainability of the church and
Mm-hmm.
the outcome of every decision and every ministry initiative that we do and every service that we, provide, like all the things, right? My instinct is to internalize the pressure of all of those things. And one of the things that I desperately need solitude for is to recognize that, because if I don't recognize it, it just
Mhm.
accumulates.
Mhm.
And then I got all this built up pressure inside, like physically inside. And I need to take that walk.
Mhm.
And I need to okay, get some of that, just the blood flowing in my body, and get clarity mentally and emotionally to go, okay, I'm carrying something I don't need to be carrying, and I'm going to intentionally have an encounter with God
Mhm.
and give it back to him,
Mhm.
and it's hard to do. It's hard not to carry that, but I think that's the way. Maybe not the only thing that needs to be done, but it's a critical step in getting freedom from some of those burdens, is finding a place of solitude where I can have an encounter with myself, recognize and begin to process those things, and realize what's going on. Because a lot of times what happens, I think, for all of this is we have all this built up pressure and anxiety, and we don't really know what it is.
Mhm.
And we need some space to reflect and process and go, why am I feeling like this? Why am I
Yeah.
so tense right now? Why am I all bent out of shape? Why am I short tempered? Why am I,
Mhm.
exhausted? Oh, I bet it's because I'm carrying too much responsibility, and I'm worried
Mhm.
about, you know, this thing that we're doing at the church, and I'm worried about this project that we just got started, and I'm worried about the next sermon series that I'm going to preach, and I'm worried about our staff team, and I'm worried about, somebody quitting or finding the right person we want to hire, or, somebody's
Yeah.
got a problem and they just complained to me about this or that, or somebody's, they got a health issue and I feel like, oh, we need to try to do, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like all these things build up, but until you can name them, it's just,
Mhm.
it's like this tangled web of things. And so
Mhm.
I think I need that encounter with myself
Mhm.
that would then lead to an encounter with the enemy, who one of the strategies of, you know, Satan and our spiritual enemy is to keep us from recognizing all those things.
Mhm.
You see, C.S. Lewis talks about that in the
Mhm.
Screw Tape Letters. Like, one of the strategies of the enemy is to keep us distracted and keep us
Yeah.
moving and busy and productive, so that we won't recognize all the things that are getting us tangled up in knots.
Mhm.
So the encounter with self leads to an ability to say, okay, just getting these things out into the light and beginning to process them takes away a lot of the enemy's power, because then I can have an encounter with God and go, all right, I'm going to do the best I can, but
Mhm.
God, I mean, I can't manufacture outcomes that are spiritual outcomes. Like
Mhm.
I can't manufacture spiritual healing for people, or
Mhm.
healing of any kind.
Yeah.
I can't, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. I can't manufacture meaningful connections for everybody that's,
Mhm.
part of our church. I can't manufacture purpose for other people. You're going to have to do that.
Mhm.
And I'm doing my best, but you're going to have to take responsibility. And he wants to do that. He's not afraid of that responsibility. I'm the one that's constantly clinging to it.
Mhm.
But solitude is where I can let go of it, recognize it, and process it through, and gain a little bit of my own healing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was just listening, or I was just talking to another guy in ministry, and he shared a sermon that he said has been the most formative in his time in ministry, and it was from Francis Chan. Um, and he was in, I want to say it was First Timothy, but where Paul tells Timothy, make it your ambition to live a quiet life.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how we live in a culture where, you know, everybody wants to be an influencer. I think you've mentioned this before, like the number one
Yeah.
answer that Gen Z gives for what they want to do career
Yep.
wise is to be an influencer. And so it's like everything we do, we want it to be seen, we want it to be public, we want to have a voice. Like everybody, because of the technologies that we
Mm-hmm.
are surrounded by, thinks like, oh, I can have a platform, I can have a voice, and that's what we make our ambition towards.
Yeah.
And he just asked the question, like, what if we had a whole generation of people who just go in a quiet spot and spend time in prayer and do good works without anybody ever knowing it.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of solitude too, is just freeing ourselves from exactly that, trying to like
Mm-hmm.
prop ourselves up and build up our own platform and have a voice or have an impact. And
Yeah.
it's the pressure you're talking about of
Yeah.
like feeling like we got to do that
Yeah.
and just letting God take care of that. And it's funny that he uses the word ambition too. Like you can be ambitious about a lot of things.
Yeah.
But it's like we should be ambitious about living a quiet life,
Yeah.
which is interesting. And I just think that is increasingly challenging in the world we live in because even for most people, including myself, when you think about wanting to get alone and like you've had a busy day or you've had a lot of meetings, it's like, oh, I just want to go be alone. And first thing we do, pull out the
Yeah.
phone and just start scrolling.
Yeah.
And that's how we spend whatever, even if it's like we only get 5 minutes in a day, that's how we're spending
Yeah.
it. And it's just like, what are we, there's no value in that.
Yeah.
It's not doing anything restorative for us. It's just killing time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would love to talk more about the specific pieces you mentioned
Yeah.
of like, okay, so we get to a place, but then there's practice involved
Yeah.
too. So what does that look like?
Yeah. So the encounter with self is the first one. And I think it's listed first for a reason because it's probably the most immediate thing that we become aware of is just whatever we're carrying. And when you read John Mark Comer going through it, the first thing that he lists as a common thing that we'll feel when
Mm-hmm.
we find a quiet place and we begin a practice of being quiet, the first thing in our encounter with self that comes up for many people is exhaustion.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard Pete Scazzaro talk about this. He said, sometimes when we when we actually do it, we actually find the quiet place and we peel away and we're there. Like, and that's a significant step, right?
Mm-hmm.
We found our eremos. We have pulled away and we're here in a place for the purpose of solitude. And it helped me so much to hear him say this. He's like, a lot of times when I finally slow down, I'll just fall asleep. Like I'm just
Mm-hmm.
so physically exhausted that, I'll sit in quiet, close my eyes to just, oh, okay. Begin to let the noise settle. And before you know it, just like fighting off sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm so glad he said that because if I'm one of the reasons that I think walking is helpful because I'm not going to fall asleep walking.
Yeah.
If solitude in the middle of the day or then after, like in the evening after a long, a long day of work, if I sit down at, 5:30, 6 p.m. or whatever before dinner, oh man,
Yeah.
I'll be out.
Yeah.
But one of the things that Pete Scazzaro said is like, you know what? Sometimes that's what we need more than anything. Like sometimes your body's like, you do need a little nap before you can do anything else. Like you just need to recover a little bit. So having permission to name that exhaustion and get a little bit of recovery from it, I think is an important one. So that's one common thing that people feel when we have a first encounter with ourselves. But then also it's what I alluded to with my own experience. It tends to be all those negative thoughts and emotions that we have stuffed away because we don't have time for them. They're uncomfortable. They're distractions from being productive. Like I don't have time to nurse or to pay attention to that emotion. And so, it's usually, and unfortunately, like not all the happy things, like for most people, and we've referenced this before, I think, the statistics will say whoever it is that studies these things says we have like 14 negative thoughts for every one positive thought. Like we just tend to fixate on the negative. And so I think that's true when we get into solitude as well, is some of those things that are just undealt with
Mm-hmm.
because we haven't had time or we've been afraid to acknowledge our fears.
Mm-hmm.
Um, those are the things that come up. And I think one of the pivot points in solitude is for many people when we start to feel those things, like it might be grief, like
Mm-hmm.
if someone's lost a loved one and has never really processed through that grief and that loss. I think a lot of people live life running away from their grief because it hurts. It hurts
Mm-hmm.
to think about that loved one that we don't have anymore, and so it's easier just to pretend it's not there and get busy
Yeah.
doing something else. And so I think a lot of us busy ourselves with things to occupy our mind so that we don't default to that painful loss or that painful memory. I think for a lot of people, we've made mistakes or, just screwed some things up that it's just
Mm-hmm.
our own fault. And rather than giving ourselves the grace of processing through that and
Mm-hmm.
forgiving ourselves, or we're hanging on to anger and resentment towards somebody else, that, allowing us to sort of in a healthy way process through that, all those things are uncomfortable. All
Mm-hmm.
those things are emotionally difficult. And so we don't like to deal with them. And I think for a lot of people, the moment we get quiet and that we aren't distracted by work or phone or
Mm-hmm.
parenting or running around just getting stuff done, that's when those difficult feelings come up. And I think that's what stops solitude for a lot of people is, oh, that I don't like that.
Yeah.
So I better get busy again. But I
Yeah.
think that's kind of the critical point of,
Mm-hmm.
are we willing to have an encounter with our true self in order to experience some of the healing that's on the other side of it? But we've got to be willing to
Mm-hmm.
sit with it for a little bit.
Yeah. It's so funny because even I'm thinking back to the I've gone to the beach twice so far this summer, once with my family and once with Haley's family. When we went with my family, every day on the beach, I would go for a walk by myself, long
Mm-hmm.
walk,
Yeah.
probably 30 minutes or so,
Yeah.
and not take my phone or
Yeah.
anything.
Yep.
And I came back from that week at the beach feeling so restful, so relaxed, felt like I got just so much clarity. Like the Lord was like helping me, speak with a friend who was going through a tough time, and felt like I got a lot of clarity and words from the Lord to share with that person through those walks. And we went to with Haley's family, and we just have such a big group that I just wanted to, I kind of had FOMO, so I wanted to be around everybody, and I didn't take that
Mm-hmm.
time in solitude. And boy, it was more stressful than it was restful,
Really.
being away. And I
Yeah.
love the beach. Like
Yeah.
usually,
And the people that you were with.
yeah, exactly. And I wonder if that's a big part of why
Yeah.
is I had all this stuff I needed to process, but I wasn't giving myself the time and space
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, even, I think back to when I was making walking a consistent habit, I gained so much clarity about how I feel like God's wired me, what my giftings are, what I want to do, the type of impact I want to make in the world, and what steps I needed to take to get healthier. I gained so much clarity just through walking and spending time
Mm-hmm.
in solitude that I don't think I would have gained had I just kept distracting myself.
Yeah.
And then continuing it after that, I felt like I gained even more clarity on what the root cause of what I was feeling and experiencing during that time, because it just continued to
Yeah.
unfold in that time of solitude. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think the encounter with self is a huge part
Yeah.
of that solitude
Yeah. I
practice.
agree. And tell me if your experience corroborates what I'm about to say. One of the things that I think is really good news about solitude and the encounter with self, and then also the encounter with the enemy, is that we don't have to come up with an agenda for these things.
Yeah.
One of the things I read, I think I referenced this a couple weeks ago in another part of the book, but I think it's Robert Mulholland, The Gift of Being Yourself. The point he makes in the book is like we don't have to like go chasing down the benefits of solitude.
Mm-hmm.
Like just giving it space, the things that we need to process are gonna come up.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we just get the AirPods out
Mm-hmm.
and stop the flow of inputs and just make space to be open to
Mm-hmm.
whatever needs to get processed. And I think a way of doing that symbolically is like when I start a walk, or if I'm sometimes I will sit, especially like I'll go out in my backyard. We have open woods behind our yard, and we've got this little log bench that that I put out there kind of on the edge of the woods. And sometimes, especially in the fall when it's a
Mm-hmm.
little crisper outside, I'll just sit and kind of watch the leaves fall. And the invitation is, all right, Lord,
Yeah.
bring to mind what
Mm-hmm.
needs to be there. I'm just going to sit here and be attentive.
Mm-hmm.
So I think our instinct, especially in a productivity driven
Mm-hmm.
culture, is we need an agenda for that time. And I'm a type A,
Mm-hmm.
get things done, be productive type of, personality. And so I feel like I need to have an agenda for it. But if we can replace an agenda with just attentiveness and be attentive to the thoughts and feelings that come up, whatever they might be, they're going to come up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and sometimes I think it takes time. Like something might not immediately come to mind, but invariably I'll find myself walking along and thinking about nothing in particular.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, mind wanders off to
Yeah.
whatever it might be, but giving it enough time to kind of settle, because it does take time for the noise of
Mm-hmm.
normal life to kind of settle down. Without trying, I'll find myself mulling over something
Mm-hmm.
that, oh yeah, that's needed attention, but it's not going to fight for attention.
Mm-hmm.
It just needs space to kind of come to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And I've found that to be true. I was so encouraged when I read it. Like, it's not like you have to muscle your way to the benefits of solitude.
Yeah.
It's like you release your way
Mm-hmm.
into the benefits of solitude
Yeah.
by just giving your brain
Mm-hmm.
and your heart some space to breathe and
Mm-hmm.
to talk to you. And
Yeah.
I've found that to be true, that I don't have to work at it. You just got to find that
Mm-hmm.
quiet space and give it some time.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up because it is good to note that, like, I mean, we still live in the real world, right? We're still going to get distracted. We're still going to
Yeah.
think about other things. Like, it's not
instant.
your brain's not empty the whole time you're
No.
practicing solitude. But there was something I want to say it was Comer, maybe it was somebody else, but they talked about, actually I think it was Tyler Staton. He talked about like using phrases when you're practicing
Yeah.
solitude to kind of ground you back into
Yeah.
it. So one that he recommended was simply just saying, "Come, Holy Spirit." Like when you recognize, okay, I'm off thinking about Tennessee football when I should be, then you can just say,
And sometimes you need to,
and sometimes you need to,
you need to mull over the
Yeah.
recruiting class and the
Yep.
prospects for the next year.
Yeah,
But
sometimes you're processing the emotions of a loss and you got to let that settle. But I found that to be helpful. I've used that phrase often to help redirect when I start, chasing rabbits. And, but yeah, I think you're spot on. You don't have to have an agenda. What you're doing is you're holding open space for the Spirit,
yes.
and the Spirit will guide and direct your thoughts and what emotions need to come to the surface, and he'll make that moment
Yeah.
what it needs to be. It's almost like you're setting the table for the Spirit to sit across.
Right.
And not that he won't engage with you unless you set
Right.
the table, but
Yeah.
you're more likely to have good conversation and interaction with a friend if you set the table to share a meal
Yeah.
than you would if you just want it to happen like, oh, maybe we'll bump into each other.
Yeah.
And, it's like an intentional practice of opening up space for the Spirit to do what needs to be done.
Exactly. And I think that gets to the encounter with God. If we believe God is a person,
Mm-hmm.
which if you believe the Bible, he's real,
Mm-hmm.
and we have a real relationship with him. And the way that we communicate with God and listen to God is not only by reading his word,
Mm-hmm.
but by creating space to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And if we believe that God is real, then it makes perfect sense to have an expectation that he's got some things that he's going to bring to us in that conversation. So when we talk about, prayer and Bible study are kind of the obvious, that's the diet and exercise of the
Yeah.
spiritual life, right? But I think the way I grew up thinking about prayer and Bible study, and I think a lot of people do, is it's all on our end. Like, I'm the one doing all the talking in the prayer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the one doing all the reading in the reading, right? So it's kind of a one-sided pursuit. What I think is so healthy about everybody that we've referenced,
Mm-hmm.
and then going all the way back to what's called the Desert Fathers, which would be these
Yep.
spiritual leaders who got away from the cities into the deserts to find Eremos, the quiet place where they could pray and reflect. And it wasn't just one directional. It wasn't like their prayers were constantly talking.
Yep.
Probably more of their prayers were just listening and being attentive. And it's different than kind of a, like a Eastern spirituality that just is like you open your mind to nothingness.
Mm-hmm.
No, you're opening your ears to hear what the Holy Spirit wants to say. And so he's the one that's going to if we let him set the agenda and we're just attentive to the agenda that he wants to set. And then I think we use a little spiritual discernment, right? Because yeah, it's a great point to make. My mind drifts to my favorite topics of the day as well, and you go, okay, that's probably my,
Yeah.
that's probably just some noise. Let me try to redirect and invite the Holy Spirit. Come, Holy Spirit, you set the agenda. But I found more often than not, once you kind of settle in a little bit, for me, another thing that helps, I mentioned sitting in the back kind of in the fall. And if I'm just paying attention to like the leaves, or, you sit still long enough and you start to see things that you didn't immediately notice. Like I'll watch the ants crawl around the ground, or I'll watch birds like bounce from branch to branch, or I'll watch, what the leaves do when the wind blows, and I'll notice, oh, that's a maple tree, that's an oak tree. I don't know what kind of tree that tree is, but even just, I feel like there's some sort of connection between nature as God's creation and God setting the agenda. Like if I can pay attention to the nature that's in front of me, my mind will drift toward, without even thinking about it, I'll find myself processing those deeper thoughts and emotions that I didn't even, I didn't work my way there. It's like, oh yeah, I do need to be thinking about that. And I think when we think about solitude, when we talk about solitude, it might sound intimidating and difficult. But what I'm trying to get across is, in my experience, it's just not. Like it's just getting past that first bit of slowing down enough to actually stop, get to that quiet place, and not be afraid of that initial wave of negative thoughts and emotions, but just sitting with them, letting them be, let that pressure dissipate. I think the enemy thrives on the pressure. So if we can just, okay, that's a thing. I'm gonna try to stop hanging on to it, but I recognize it, and Holy Spirit, it's yours. So I don't know what to do about it, but just keep reminding myself that God's the only one that can do something about whatever that thing is, and just, yeah, I think there's something that organically, spiritually happens in solitude that's more than the sum of its parts.
And I think it takes doing it to realize the value of it
Yeah.
because it truly is such a complementary practice. Like, because you've shared this that practicing the way they set it up is it's you said this at the beginning, it's the other side of the coin to
Yeah.
community. So like you practice solitude to focus on the loving God part, but that is what fuels your ability to then go be in loving community with
100%.
others.
Yeah.
Um, but also like speaking of the desert fathers and mothers, I was listening to a podcast recently about like that period of church history. Their rhythm of having set times of prayer and solitude fueled their work, and their work fueled their prayer. It was like a
Yeah.
symbiotic. What would happen in their times of prayer and solitude would flow into
Mhm.
the work that they did, and what happened when they were working would flow into their next,
Mhm.
time of prayer and solitude. And so I think it is a very like it's a very complementary practice to all the other things that we value and care about, or at least should value and care about.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like when you start talking about solitude in some people's minds, all the reasons why they can't practice it pop up, or it's almost like oh, that's nice. It
Mhm.
sounds nice, but that's just not realistic.
Right.
It's great. I'm imagining somebody's listening saying, "Well, you guys are pastors. That's great that you
Right.
get to do that, but what
Yeah.
about me who's working
Yeah.
two jobs
Sure.
or I'm a single mom, what am I supposed to do?" Um, so, I have some thoughts on that, but I would love to hear what would your response be to someone who's thinking kind of having those thoughts in the back
Yeah.
of
I
their head?
mean, so I don't want to be misunderstood when I say it's not as hard as we might think once you're there. I think that's true. But I think making space for it,
Mhm.
that can be the hard part.
Mhm.
Because like I talk about, I got 5 kids. I've
Mhm.
had a full-time job. My wife is not working. We're managing those schedules. It's all the things. And so, yeah, finding the time to get to the quiet place, not easy.
Mhm.
But I think just prioritizing it and finding the space for it. And I think this is where it fits so well in this tech conversation because somehow none of us has a hard time finding time to
Mhm.
scroll,
Yeah.
right? I mean, almost 2 years ago now, a year and a half ago, preached a sermon series called Practice Makes Progress. And
Mhm.
one of our daily drills challenges was before you scroll,
Mhm.
pray this prayer.
Mhm.
And so I think connecting solitude to our practices with our tech is a great place to start. So most all of us, you've got some times in between the things where your phone comes out and you're scrolling on Instagram or
Mhm.
Facebook or reading the news or whatever it might be. I think starting there as a trigger,
Mhm.
like Atomic Habits talks about that, like
Yeah.
identify something you already do and
Mhm.
attach something better to it. So I think that's a good place to start is,
Mhm.
where are we doom scrolling?
Mhm.
And let's turn some of that doom scrolling solitude or that let's turn some of that isolation
Yeah.
into solitude.
Yeah. Yeah, the more intentional piece. That was actually gonna be what I was gonna say because the average American, and the last time I looked at this, spends 750 hours a year on social media and over 2,000 hours watching TV.
Yeah.
So I think
Some small fraction of that in solitude would go a
yeah.
long way.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be like you don't have to go do it for like hours on end. It can
Yeah.
be if all you got's 5 minutes, the
Yeah.
Lord will use that five
Yeah.
minutes. So there's varying degrees to which you practice solitude,
Yeah.
but I think all of us need this rhythm at some level in our lives, and we got to figure out
Yeah.
what that looks like for us. But when you just evaluate, yeah, how much time am I spending doing TV and scrolling? You can carve out some time
Most of us can.
to
Yeah.
to be in solitude. But I wanted to just bring up, there's a baseline to
Yeah.
doing this practice, and then you can have some reach,
Yeah.
or you can challenge
Stretch.
yourself
Yeah.
and stretch yourself the more you do it and the more you practice it. So, man, if all you got is 5 minutes in the morning before the kids wake up and the whirlwind starts going, take that 5 minutes.
Yeah. It's the intentionality, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, it's like not don't grab your phone right when you wake up, and hold that space open for
Mhm.
solitude. Because yeah, I think that's we we think we're so busy and think that we don't have time for anything. But if you actually take a step back and like take an inventory of how
Little
you're
audit.
spending your time,
Yeah.
we usually have more time than we think
Yeah.
because we're just wasting
Yep.
a lot of it.
So solitude.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good practice to think of as we think about information technology and the
Mm-hmm.
communication devices that are attached to it. We need a communication device with God and even with ourselves. And I
Mm-hmm.
think solitude can be a big piece of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for bringing that
Yeah.
practice to us on this week's episode. And we hope those of you listening get a chance to practice some time in solitude this
Agreed.
week. And excited to continue these conversations about practices
Yeah.
and
We
rhythms
could talk about this
that'll,
kind of stuff a lot.
yeah, yeah. So we hope you've been enjoying as we talk about these practices, and we will see you again next week.
All right.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the end of the episode. If you're enjoying these conversations each week, do us a favor. Hit that subscribe button right here on YouTube or the follow button wherever you listen to podcasts. It's quick, it's free, it's easy, and it makes a huge difference in helping our podcast reach more people in the Lake Norman community. Thank you for supporting the For Lake Norman podcast, and we hope you have a great week.